Around 4000 BC, the first great cities of humanity, Uruk, Tel Eridu. World Heritage, the Awa of southern Iraq, a refuge of biodiversity and the relict landscape of the Mesopotamian cities. Location of the Awa of southern Iraq. The Awa consists of 7 components, including 3 archaeological sites and 4 wetland areas located in southern Iraq. The archaeological cities of Uruk and along with the archaeological site of Tel Eridu, form part of the Sumerian cities and settlements that developed in southern Mesopotamia between 4000 and 3000 BC, situated in the wetland delta of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Awa in southern Iraq is one of the largest inland deltas in the world, characterized by a very hot and dry environment. This site is recognized by the World Heritage Committee as a mixed heritage site, with the following outstanding universal value, OUV. Criterion 3. The ruins of the Mesopotamian cities of Uruk, and Eridu demonstrate the growth and subsequent decline of urban centers and society in southern Mesopotamia, from the Ubaid and Sumerian periods to the Babylonian and Hellenistic eras. These 3 cities emerged and grew during a period of profound change in human history, serving as major centers of religion, politics, economy, and culture. This heritage demonstrates that the culture of southern Mesopotamia contributed to the urbanized societies of the ancient Near East and the history of humanity as a whole. The urban layout, reflecting a hierarchical society that included ziggurats, temples, palaces, city walls, hydraulic facilities, royal tombs and palaces, sanctuaries and public warehouses, as well as the centralized control of resources and surplus that gave birth to the first writing systems and administrative record-keeping, left traces across time and space that are hard to find parallels for. Criterion 5. This heritage is located in the desert today, but it was originally situated near freshwater wetlands. However, the ruins of the ancient cities of Uruk, and Eridu, which retreated or became saline before drying up, best illustrate the impact of the unstable deltaic terrain of the Tigris and Euphrates on the rise and fall of major urban centers. Evidence of this residual wetland topography can be found today in the urban landscape, in the form of permanent or seasonal wetlands, dry riverbeds and canal bottoms, and shallow depressions on hills that were once settlements surrounded by wetlands. Architectural elements, archaeological evidence, and important documents written in cuneiform clearly demonstrate how wetland topography contributed. Criteria 9 and Criteria 10 are standards for natural heritage, so they are omitted in this video. World Heritage Awa in southern Iraq. Awa in southern Iraq evolved as part of a larger alluvial plain during the final stages of tectonic activity, which led to the formation of the Zagros Mountains. Various factors, including tectonic movements, climate change, river hydrodynamics, precipitation changes, and sea level changes, intertwined to shape this landscape. Changes in sea level and climate have played a significant role in affecting the quantity and quality of water flowing into the Awa through rivers and tributaries, alongside the advance and retreat of the sea during the transition from arid to semi-arid and humid climates over the past 18,000 years. Between 5000 and 3000 BC, sea levels reached their peak about 200 kilometers inland from the current coastline, and wetlands extended further inland. The wetlands and shifting landscapes of this delta plain were the centers where the first cities flourished. The 3 cultural components of this heritage, Uruk, and Eridu, were originally located on the edges of freshwater wetlands and developed into some of the most important urban centers in southern Mesopotamia. These cities showcase the beginnings of writing, monumental architecture in the form of mud brick temples and ziggurats, as well as complex technologies and societies. The vast amount of cuneiform documents and archaeological evidence proves that the wetlands were central to shaping the culture, economy, worldview, and religious beliefs of southern Mesopotamia. From 2000 BC, the sea retreated to the south. This caused another climate change towards a drier environment, leading to the drying up of ancient wetlands and ultimately the decline of the great cities in southern Mesopotamia. Today, the mud brick ruins of Uruk, and Eridu remain dry, but the ruins of the ziggurats set against the impressive landscape of the parched alluvial plain are striking. As the seawater receded, new wetlands formed to the southeast. The main wetlands of Awa, as we know them today, were formed about 3,000 years ago. The Huweza, Dongamar, West Hamara and central wetlands of the Awa River are primarily fed by water flowing from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Huweza wetlands have a unique freshwater system, receiving large amounts of water from floods and limited seasonal rainfall from the northern and northeastern highlands. At the same time, The only natural component that was not rapidly drained in the 1980s and 1990s was a major ecological element. As a result, it became a key refuge for many major bird species originating from Africa and India, and after reflooding occurred in the early 2000s, it spread to other areas. Uruk. Uruk is famous as the capital of Gilgamesh, the hero of the epic in mythology and literature. Scholars estimate Uruk to be the Erech mentioned in the Bible Genesis 10:10, which is the second city built by Nimrod in Shinar. Uruk was not only one of the first cities, but also a major driving force in the formation of nations. From 4000 BC, it developed over 800 years from a small rural village into a large city with a permanent bureaucracy, military, and a stratified society. Other settlements coexisted with Uruk, but they were generally much smaller, around 10 hectares. Uruk was much larger and more complex. The culture of Uruk, exported by Sumerian merchants and colonizers, influenced all the surrounding peoples, who gradually developed their own comparable competitive economies and cultures. Ultimately, Uruk could not control colonies at long distances like Telbrak through military power. Geographical factors contributing to the development of Uruk. The geographical factors supported Uruk's unprecedented growth. This city was located on the southern Euphrates River in Mesopotamia,
이
a site
도시는
of
고대
ancient
문명의
civilization,
유적지인 메소포타미아 남부 유프라테스 강에 위치해 있었다.
gradually domesticating native grains at the foothills of the Zagros Mountains and cultivating a variety of edible plants through extensive irrigation techniques. Thanks to the domestication of crops and proximity to rivers, Uruk was able to grow relatively easily into the largest city in Sumer in terms of population and area. The surplus products produced by Uruk's agriculture and the large population laid the foundation for processes such as trade, craft specialization, and the evolution of writing. Writing originated in Uruk around 3300 BC. The artifacts unearthed from the excavation, such as various pottery and the world's oldest writing tablet, support this situation. The excavation of Uruk is very complex because old buildings were repeatedly reused, making the stratigraphy ambiguous. The uppermost layer is most likely from the Jemdet Nasser period, 3100 to 2900 BC, and was built on top of earlier structures dating back to the Ubaid period. The history of Uruk. Around the mid-4000s BC,
기원전 4000년대 중반쯤 신석기가 저물 때
practical pottery was being
우루크에서는
produced in
상당히
Uruk.
실용적인
While the pottery from the earlier period was noble and decorative, the new pottery resembled mass-produced items that were faithful to practical purposes. Scholars of ancient Near Eastern history speculate that this was due to an increase in population, leading to a higher demand for pottery, which required the production of more vessels at a faster rate. Around the same time, cities emerged, and the areas surrounded by walls were unlike anything seen before. This phenomenon is referred to as the Uruk phenomenon, or the Uruk Revolution. With the rise of cities, the Uruk society experienced division of labor and specialization. Various artisans, civil engineers, and administrators emerged, along with various systems and standard units, leading to the flourishing of written communication. From an archaeological perspective, it is believed that the contemporary civilization of Egypt received the idea of writing from Uruk, making it truly a pioneer of ancient civilization. Uruk was founded by King Enmerkar. Although he is mentioned in the Sumerian king list above him, the epic of Enmerkar and the Lord of Aratta states that Enmerkar built a house of heaven for the goddess Inanna in the Iana district of Uruk. Uruk underwent several stages of growth, from the early Uruk period 4000 to 3500 BC to the late Uruk period 3500 to 3100 BC. The Anu district was called Kulaba before it merged with the Iana district. Kulaba dates back to the Eridu period, which was one of the oldest and most important cities in Sumer. The Iana district was composed of several buildings with spaces for workshops, and it was enclosed by the city and walls. In contrast, the Anu district was built on a terrace with a temple at the top. It is clear that Iana was dedicated to Inanna from the very early Uruk period throughout the history of the city. The rest of the city consisted of typical courtyard houses, grouped according to the occupations of the people living around Iana and Anu. Uruk was penetrated by a canal system described as the Venice of the desert. This canal system flowed throughout the city, connecting the maritime trade of the ancient Euphrates River with the surrounding agricultural areas. The original city centre of Uruk was located to the southwest of the now dry ancient Euphrates River. The current location of Walker is to the northeast of the modern Euphrates River. The change in location occurred at some point in history due to the movement of the Euphrates River, which, along with salinization from irrigation, affected the decline of Uruk. Archaeologists describe the archaeological phases of Uruk as follows. Uruk, Phase 1, Levels 18. Eridu period, around 5000 BC, foundation of Uruk. Uruk, Phase 2, Levels 18 to 16, Late Ubaid period, 4800–4200 BC. Uruk, Phase 3, Levels 16 to 10, Uruk period, 4000–3800 BC. Uruk, Phase 4, Levels 9 to 6, Uruk period, 3800–3400 BC. Uruk, Phase 5, Levels 5 to 4, Uruk period, 3400–3100 BC. Construction of the first monumental temple in the Iana district. Uruk, Phase 6, Jemdet Nasser, Uruk, Anu district. Anu's earth is composed of the massive terrace Anu Ziggurat, dedicated to the sky god Anu of Sumer. During the Uruk III period, a massive white temple was built on top of the ziggurat. A stone temple built during the Uruk VI period was discovered beneath the northwestern edge of the ziggurat. The stone temple was built on a platform made of compacted earth, using limestone and bitumen, and it was plastered with lime mortar. The platform itself was built on a reed mat called jipar, which was ceremonially used as a marriage bed. Jipar was the source of generative power, and its strength radiated over the structure. The structure of the ziggurat further developed the mythological concepts of Enuma Elish, the creation epic of Mesopotamian mythology, and, as can be seen from the canals, pools, and vessels found there, it was likely related to sacrificial rituals. Subsequently, the structure was deliberately destroyed by alternately covering it with clay and stone, then excavating and filling it with mortar. The Anu Ziggurat began as a massive mound with a cellar, the inner chamber of the temple, during the Uruk period around 4000 BC, and was expanded through 14 stages of construction. The earliest stage used architectural features similar to the PPNA culture of Anatolia. It was a single cellar, with a terrazzo floor, where a form of sculpture called bucrania was found. The White Temple was built around 3200 to 3000 BC. The White Temple could be seen from far away across the Sumerian plains, rising 21 meters high and covered in plaster that reflected sunlight like a mirror. In addition to this temple, there were massive limestone-paved stairs in the Anu Ziggurat, and the pool parallel to the stairs was used to drain water from the ziggurat. Uruk, the Ayana district, holds historical significance as monumental. Public architecture and writing emerged during the Uruk period 6 to 4. The combination of these two developments established Iana as the first true city and civilization in human history. The Iana of the Fourth period contains some of the earliest examples of writing. The Stone Cone Temple, the first building on Earth, was built during the VI period on top of the existing Ubaid Temple and is surrounded by limestone walls with an elaborate support system. Named after the colourful stone cone mosaic embedded in its facade, the Stone Cone Temple is believed to be the oldest water worship temple in Mesopotamia. This temple was destroyed during the Uruk IV period, and its artifacts were buried in the Rimshan building. In the subsequent period, during Uruk V, a limestone temple was built about 100 meters east of the Stone Cone Temple on a 2-meter-high earthen platform over the existing Ubaid Temple. Like the Stone Cone Temple, it demonstrates the continuity of Ubaid culture. The Ubaid culture is a culture revealed at the Ubaid ruins near representing the culture of the first people to settle in the southern Mesopotamian alluvial plain from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age. It began around 6800 BC and continued until the Uruk period, around 3800 BC. The invention of the wheel in the beginning of the Bronze Age occurred during the Ubaid period. However, the limestone temple was unprecedented in size and use of stone, and it was clearly different from traditional Ubaid architecture. The stone was quarried from the Nod of Umayyad, about 60 kilometers east of Uruk. It is unclear whether the entire temple was built of this limestone or just the foundation. The limestone temple may have been the first Inanna temple, but this cannot be confirmed. Like the Stone Cone Temple, the limestone temple was also covered with a conical mosaic. Both of these temples were rectangular, with corners aligned to the cardinal directions, and the central hall had 2 small halls on the sides along the long axis, with a reinforced facade. This is a prototype of future Mesopotamian temple architecture. The building complex, referred to as AC, EK, Rimshan, cone mosaic, courtyard, and walls, were constructed during Ayana 4B between these two monumental structures. These buildings were constructed during a significant expansion in Uruk, when the city grew to 250 hectares and established long-distance trade, inheriting architectural styles from previous eras. For reference, Gyeongbokgung Palace is 43 hectares, and Yeouido is 290 hectares. The Reemshin Building, named after its brick shape with a width of 16 centimeters, is a monument where a ceremonial fire continues to burn in the center even after the stone cone temple was destroyed. For this reason, the Uruk IV period represents a reconfiguration of faith and culture. The facade of this monument may have been covered with geometric and figurative murals. The Reemshin bricks first used in this temple were used to construct all the buildings in Iana during the Uruk IV period. The use of color cones in frontal treatment has greatly advanced and may have achieved the greatest effect at the cone mosaic temple. This temple, consisting of 3 parts, was the most monumental structure in Iana at the time, including Temple N, round pillar hall, and cone mosaic courtyard. This temple was all deliberately destroyed, and the entire Iana district was rebuilt on a much grander scale during the 4th A period. In the IVA era, the limestone temple was demolished, and a red temple was built on its foundation. The accumulated ruins of the Uruk 4B building formed a terrace, specifically an L-shaped terrace, on which buildings C, D, M, the auditorium, and the column hall were constructed. Building E was initially considered a palace, but was later presumed to be a communal building. In addition, a grand court, which is a sunken courtyard surrounded by 2 layers of benches covered with conical mosaics, was built in the 4th phase. A small canal flows into the grand court, which may have once irrigated the garden. The impressive buildings of this era were constructed when Uruk reached its peak and expanded to 600 hectares. All buildings in Iana 4A were destroyed during the Uruk III period for unclear reasons. The architecture of the 3 Iana buildings was very different from previous constructions. The massive temple complex was replaced by baths and labyrinthine Apadana buildings around the Grand Garden. This period corresponds to the early dynastic Suma, around 2900 BC, and was a time of great social upheaval, overshadowed by competing city-states under the dominance of Uruk. The fortress-like architecture of this era reflects that turmoil. The Inanna Temple continued to function during this period under a new form and a new name, the House of Inanna of Uruk. The location of this structure is currently unknown. After being merged into the Akkadian Empire, Uruk was a prosperous city during the early Sumerian dynasty, particularly in the early 2nd Dynasty period, but eventually declined after being absorbed into the Akkadian Empire. Later, in the Neo-Sumerian period, Uruk thrived as a major economic and cultural center under the sovereignty of Ur. The Ayana Temple was restored as part of an ambitious construction program that includes a new temple for Inanna. This temple includes the ziggurat known as the House of the Universe, located to the northeast of the Iana ruins from the Uruk period. Around 2000 BC, Uruk experienced a rapid decline until it was annexed as a provincial capital by the Neo-Assyrian Empire around 850 BC. Under the rule of the Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires, Uruk largely regained its former glory. Around 250 BC, a new temple complex called the Head Temple was added to the northeastern part of the Anu district of Uruk. Bit Rezi was one of the major centers of Neo-Babylonian astronomy, along with Esagila. All temples and canals were restored during the reign of Nabopolassar. During this period, Uruk was divided into 5 main areas: the Temple of Adad, the Royal Orchard, the Ishtar Gate, the Temple of Lugali, and the Shamash Gate area. Uruk, known as Orcha to the Greeks, continued to prosper under the Seleucid Empire. During this period, Uruk was a city covering an area of 300 hectares and home to about 40,000 residents. In 200 BC, the great sanctuary of Ishtar was added between the Anu and Iana districts. The ziggurat of the Anu temple, rebuilt during this period, was the largest constructed in Mesopotamia. When the Seleucid dynasty lost Mesopotamia to Parthia in 141 BC, Uruk continued to be used. The decline of Uruk after Parthia may have been partly due to changes in the Euphrates River. Around the year 300 AD, Uruk was nearly abandoned, but a group of Mandaeans settled there, and by around 700 AD, it was completely deserted. The ruins of Uruk were excavated in 1849 by the British archaeologist William Loftus, and they have been studied by various archaeologists since then. Uruk's architecture includes the first monumental buildings in architectural history, and until the construction of the Egyptian pyramids, it was the largest structure in the world. Most of the
우르크에는
architecture in the
건축
Near East
역사상
originates from
최초의
these buildings.
기념비적 건축물이
The stratigraphy of this archaeological site is complex, so most of the dating is controversial. Generally, the structures follow 2 main types of Sumerian architecture: a 3-part structure with 3 parallel halls, and a T-shaped structure also with 3 halls, but the central structure extends with 2 vertical bays at one end. Artifacts of Uruk. About 400 primitive cuneiform clay tablets have been discovered in Uruk, and these tablets are inscribed with Sumerian and pictographic characters. This is considered to be the earliest writing in the world, dating back to around 3300 BC. Subsequent cuneiform tablets have been deciphered, including the famous SKL that records the kings of Sumerian civilization. Many cuneiform tablets were collected from collections such as the British Museum, the Yale Babylonian Collection, and the Louvre. The oldest record of a person's name was also found in Uruk, and that name is Kushim. Several tablets mentioning Kushim have been discovered. Kushim was an accountant who recorded barley transactions. The bevel rim bowl was the most common type of vessel used during the Uruk period. It is believed to have been used to serve food or drink to dependent workers. The introduction of the potter's wheel for making pottery was developed in the later Uruk period, facilitating mass production and standardization of pottery. The Lady of Uruk, or Sumerian Mona Lisa, the Waka mask dates back to 3100 BC and is one of the earliest representations of a human face. The sculpted female face is believed to depict Inanna. It stands about 20 centimeters tall. This mask was looted from the Uruk Museum during the fall of Baghdad in April 2003, but was recovered and returned to the museum in September 2003. Additionally, the statue of King Lugal Kisalsi of Uruk, a bull sculpture made around 3000 BC, and a stele depicting lion hunting are also famous. Ur was an important Sumerian city-state in ancient Mesopotamia, located in the Di-Qar Governorate of southern Iraq. Ur is originally a coastal city located near the mouth of the Euphrates River, but as the coastline shifted, the city is now situated much further inland on the southern bank of the Euphrates River. This city was built around 3800 BC during the Ubaid period, and it is recorded that a city-state was established in the 26th century BC. The city's patron deity was Nana, the moon god of Sumer and Akkad, and the city's name originally derived from the name of the god Unug Ki, which literally means the dwelling of Nana Unug. This archaeological site is marked by the partially restored ruins of the ziggurat of Ur, where the Nana temple was excavated in the 1930s. This temple was built in the 21st century BC during the reign of Ur-Nammu and was reconstructed in the 6th century BC by Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon. Archaeological discoveries have clearly shown that Ur was a major Sumerian city centre in the Mesopotamian plain. The discovery of the royal tombs in particular confirmed their splendour. This tomb, dating back to the early 3rd millennium BCE, 25th or 24th century BCE, contained an enormous amount of luxury goods made from precious metals and semi-precious stones, imported from distant places, ancient Iran, Afghanistan, India, Asia Minor, the Levant, and the Persian Gulf. The wealth of Ur, which had no competitors until then, demonstrates how economically significant Ur was during the early Bronze Age. In the excavation of the ancient city of Ur in 1929, a lyre was discovered that resembles a modern harp, but is shaped like a bull and has 11 strings. The history of Ur. When Ur was founded, the water
우르가
level of the
건국되었을
Persian Gulf
당시
was
페르시아만의
2.5 meters higher
오늘날보다
than it is today.
2.5m 더 높았다.
At that time, Ur would have been surrounded by wetlands. Irrigation would have been unnecessary, and the city's canals were used for transportation. Fish, birds, tubers, and reeds supported the economy of Ur without an agricultural revolution. The Neolithic period of Ur. Archaeologists found evidence of early habitation in Ur at Tel
고고학자들은
al-Ubaid,
우바이드 시대
dating back to
기원전
the Ubaid
5500,
period, around
3700년경에
5500
울에서
to
초기 거주의 증거를
3700 BC.
텔알 우바이드에서
At some point, Ubaid was covered by soil layers, which 1920s excavators interpreted as evidence for the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Great Flood in Genesis. Currently, the southern Mesopotamian plain regularly experienced flooding from the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, and severe erosion caused by water and wind, which is believed to have contributed to the Mesopotamian and its derivative biblical flood narratives. The Bronze Age of Ur. There is a variety of evidence that
초기
informs
청동기
scholars about
시대의
the
우르의
significance of
중요성에
Ur during
대해
the early Bronze
학자들에게
Age.
알려주는 증거는 다양하다.
Around 2900 BC, primitive cuneiform tablets from the early dynastic period were discovered. Ur's first dynasty is believed to have possessed immense wealth and power, as evidenced by the luxurious artifacts found in the royal tombs. The list of Sumerian kings has survived, and Mesanapada is mentioned as the first king in the Sumerian king list, believed to have lived in the 26th century BC. The fact that Ur was an important urban centre at the time can be inferred from a cylindrical seal known as a city seal. These seals contain inscriptions that include the names of ancient Mesopotamian city-states, or a series of circular-shaped characters that appear to be symbols. Many of these seals were found in Ur, and the name Ur is prominently inscribed. Ur came under the rule of the Akkadian Empire, founded by King Sargon between the 24th and 22nd centuries BC. This period was when the Akkadians entered Mesopotamia around 3000 BC and dominated the Sumerians and most of the ancient Near East. The Third Dynasty of Ur, Neo-Sumerian Empire. After a brief period of chaos following the fall of the Akkadian Empire, King
아카드
Ur-Nammu
제국이
came to power,
멸망한 후 잠시
establishing the
혼란스러웠던
Third
시기를
Dynasty of
거쳐
Ur.
우르남무
He ruled between around 2047 BC and 2030 BC. During his reign, temples including the ziggurat of Ur were built, and agriculture was improved through irrigation. His code, the Ur-Nammu Code, part of which was discovered in Istanbul in 1952, is one of the oldest documents, predating the Code of Hammurabi by 300 years. He and his successor, Shulgi, were deified during their reign and remained heroes even after their death. Following Ur-Nammu, Shulgi, the greatest king of the Third Dynasty, solidified Ur's hegemony and reformed the empire into a highly centralized bureaucratic state. Shulgi ruled for at least 42 years and deified himself in the middle of his reign. The Ur Empire continued during the reigns of the three Semitic Akkadian kings, Amar-Sin, Shu-Sin, and Ibi-Sin. This empire fell to the Elamites around 1940 BC during the reign of Ibi-Sin. Ur was the largest city in the world from around 2030 BC to 1980 BC. The population was about 65,000, which was 0.1% of the world's population at the time. Although the city of Ur lost political power after the fall of the Third Dynasty, it maintained a continuous economic strength for 2 millennia due to its important position connected to the Persian Gulf. This city came under the rule of the first Babylonian dynasty of the Amorites, who emerged in southern Mesopotamia in the 19th century BC and was abandoned during the reign of the Kassites. It became part of the indigenous Maritime Kingdom dynasty for several centuries thereafter. After that, it was under the rule of the Kassites in the 16th century BC and intermittently under the control of the Middle Assyrian Empire between the 14th and 11th centuries BC. The Iron Age of Ur. Ur was conquered by the Neo-Assyrian Empire in northern Mesopotamia from the 10th century to the late 7th century BC, along with the rest of southern Mesopotamia, most of the Near East, Asia Minor, North Africa, and the southern Caucasus. From the late 7th century BC, Ur was ruled by the so-called Chaldean dynasty of Babylon. In the 6th century BC, new buildings were constructed in Ur under the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. The last Babylonian king, Nabonidus, improved the ziggurat. After Babylon fell to the Achaemenid Empire of Persia, it began to decline around 530 BC, and by the early 5th century BC, it was no longer inhabited. The fall of Ur was likely due to drought, changes in river patterns, and sedimentation blocking the outlet to the Persian Gulf. The Bible and Ur. Ur is mentioned in Genesis as the birthplace of Abraham, the ancestor of both Jews and Muslims. Abraham is believed to have lived around 2000 BC. Chaldea is mentioned 4 times in the Hebrew Bible. The Chaldeans settled in this region around 850 BC, but they did not exist anywhere in Mesopotamia during the traditionally considered time of Abraham in the 2000s BC. The Chaldean dynasty did not rule Babylon until the late 7th century BC and only maintained power until the mid-6th century BC. The name Ur can be found in Genesis 11:28, Genesis 11:31, and Genesis 157. The single verse mentioning Ur in Nehemiah 97 is a paraphrase of Genesis. The content is as follows. Genesis 11:28-29. But Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, his birthplace, before his father. Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Haran was the father of Milcah and Iscah. Genesis 11:31. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and went out from Ur of the The architecture of Ur. This archaeological site consists of mounds measuring approximately 1,200 meters by 800 meters and is about 20 meters high above the floor plan. The mounds are divided into northern and southern sections by the remnants of an ancient canal. The ruins of the city walls can be seen around the archaeological site. The area of occupation expanded from about 15 hectares during the Jemdet Nasser period to 90 hectares during the early dynastic period, reaching a peak of 108 hectares in the Third Dynasty period and 140 hectares in the Isin Larsa period, extending beyond the city walls. In later periods, the area varied. The ziggurat of Ur. The ziggurat is one of the three well-preserved structures of the Sumerian city of Ur, alongside the royal tombs and the Ur-Nammu palace, Sag. The ziggurat was dedicated by King Ur-Nammu in honor of the goddess Nanna. The Great Step Pyramid measures 64 meters in length, 45 meters in width, and over 30 meters in height. It is difficult to estimate the height since only the foundation remains. The ziggurat was part of a temple complex that served as the administrative center of Ur. The construction of the Great Ziggurat was completed in the 21st century BC by King Shorgi, who declared himself a god. During his 48-year reign, Ur grew to become the capital of a state that dominated most of Mesopotamia. King Nabonidus, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire in the 6th century BC, restored the monument to 7 tiers instead of 3, stating that there is nothing left to reveal the original appearance of the monument except for the final stage. The ruins of the Great Ziggurat were rediscovered by William Loftus in 1850. The first excavation of this site was conducted by John George Taylor in the 1850s, confirming that this site is Ur. After World War I, Reginald Campbell Thompson and Henry Hall conducted preliminary excavations. In the 1920s, extensive excavations were conducted by Leonard Woolley from 1922 to 1934, under the appointment of the University of Pennsylvania Museum and the British Museum. The ruins of the ziggurat consist of a solid mass made of 3 layers of mud bricks, which are stacked with baked bricks adhered to asphalt. The lowest layer corresponds to the original structure of Ur-Nammu, while the 2 upper layers are part of the Neo-Babylonian restoration. The facade of the lowest level and the monumental staircase were rebuilt under the orders of Saddam Hussein. The reconstructed ziggurat was damaged by rifle fire during the Gulf War in 1991, and the structure shook from explosions. There are 4 locations nearby where bombs exploded, and the walls have over 400 bullet holes. The current state of Ur. Some areas that were excavated have been covered with sand again, but the ziggurat remains fully excavated and stands as the best preserved and most visible landmark at this archaeological site. Located about 250 meters southeast of the ziggurat at the corner of the city walls, the famous royal tomb, also known as the New Sumerian Mausoleum, has been completely excavated. Many walls bear Sumerian inscriptions, and some are entirely covered with characters stamped into mud bricks. The letters cover most of the surface. There are many graffiti on the Great Pyramid itself, most of which are carved into the bricks. The tomb is completely empty. Some tombs can be entered, but most are sealed. The entire site is covered with pottery shards. Eridu, one of the 3 cities of Awar in southern Iraq. Eridu is located near Basra in the Dekar Governorate. Eridu is believed to be the oldest city in southern Mesopotamia. Based on the contents of the Sumerian king list, it is sometimes considered the first city, but this is likely to be mythological, and the actual first city in Sumer is Uruk. Located 12 kilometers southwest of the ancient site of Ur, Eridu was the southernmost of the Sumerian cities that grew around the temples to the extent that they could see each other. The god of the city of Eridu was Enki, and his wife was Damkina. Enki, who later became known as Ea, was believed to have founded this city. His temple was called Abzu because it was believed that Enki lived in the underground water known as Abzu, from which all life originated. According to the Sumerian temple hymn, another name for the Enki temple was Asira. Nearby Ur had the Ishtar temple of Eridu, built by the ruler of Lagash, Ur-Baba, and the Inanna sanctuary of Eridu, constructed by the ruler of the Ur-3 dynasty, Ur-Nammu. It is also recorded that Ur-Nammu built the Ishtar temple of Eridu in Ur, which is believed to have been rebuilt. One of the religious districts of Babylon, which includes the Esagila temple and the Ananitum temple, is also known as Eridu. The architecture of Eridu. Eridu is located on a natural hill of a basin that is about 15 miles long and 20 feet deep, separated from the Euphrates River by a sandstone mountain range called Hazem. This basin is called Asulebiat and becomes a seasonal lake Sebka during the rainy season from November to April. During this period, it is filled by the discharge of Wadi Kanega. Adjacent to the eastern edge of the seasonal lake is the Hamar Marshes wetland. In the 3rd millennium BC, the Id-Edin Eriduga Canal connected Eridu to the Euphrates River, which later changed its course. The canal's route remains marked by 8 low hills that were formed in the 2nd millennium BC. Excavations resumed under the direction of the Iraqi government and Seton Lloyd from 1946 to 1949. Among the artifacts were a terracotta boat model from the Ubaid period, with a central socket for inserting a mast and a hole for a rudder, as well as lizard-type figurines found beneath the royal tombs of Ur. As a result of the investigation of the cemetery, a burial site from the Ubaid period was discovered, containing 17 temples and 1,000 tombs made of mud bricks. The cemetery measures 2 meters by 3 meters with a gap and is constructed in a square shape using mud bricks. During the Ur III dynasty, a ziggurat was built on a platform of 300 square meters. According to A. Leo Oppenheim, who analyzed these archaeological findings, ultimately, the entire south fell into stagnation and handed over political leadership to the rulers of the northern cities. It is presumed that the city was abandoned in 600 BC as a result of increased salinity due to continuous irrigation. At the center of Eridu was the Temple of Enki, which was called the House of the Great Waters, and later in history was also referred to as the House of Water. During the Ur III dynasty, Ur-Nammu built a ziggurat on the ruins of the previous temple. Artifacts from Eridu. In March 2006, Giovanni Pettinato and S. Chiodo from La Sapienza University in Rome claimed to have discovered 500 cuneiform tablets from the early dynastic period that were damaged by an explosion on the surface of Eridu. These tablets are said to date from 2600 to 2100 BC and are believed to be part of the tablets that were in the library. The Iraqi government dispatched an investigation team to the site, but no artifacts were found, only inscribed bricks discovered at the archaeological sites around Eridu and Ur. A comparison with our heritage. Uruk, Ur, and Eridu in Awar, southern Iraq, were cities built around 4000 BC and were among the world's first major urban centers. Although they have all turned into deserts due to climate change, if we were to compare them to today, the areas near the Euphrates River in Iraq were comparable to New York in the United States. During the time when canals were being dug and cities were being built with earthworks in this region, the people living on the Korean peninsula were farming and establishing villages. The National Institute of Korean History states that Gojoseon was founded in 2333 BC, based on the contents of the Samguk Yusa. But honestly, I find it hard to believe. This is because there are no relics such as palaces or fortresses, and there is a lack of documentary evidence. Still, from the perspective of a Korean, it's a bit inappropriate to summarize it too negatively, so I will only explain about Gojoseon up to this point. So, while we can accept the founding of Gojoseon as such, it is clear from artifacts and ruins that the Bronze Age, which began around 2,000 years ago on the Korean peninsula, saw the creation of dolmens and the beaker-shaped bronze swords, along with the onset of wars to seize surplus products during the peaceful Neolithic period. Various cultures, such as architecture, civil engineering, state governance, literature, and art are transmitted through various channels like commercial activities, religion, wars, and trade from places where they first emerged. And among the transmitted cultures, those that resonate more with the people of that time spread, and the spread content has the property of transforming into the culture. The cultures of Uruk, Ur, and Eridu, which were urbanized the earliest in the world, have undoubtedly had various direct and indirect influences on other regions such as Egypt, Greece, Persia, the Indus, and the Yellow River civilizations. From the perspective of our country's citizens, these places are not easily accessible, and due to a lack of research, it is still quite difficult to explain clearly. However, I believe that once the research results become abundant, comparisons with our ancient culture will be possible. By the way, seeing a once global metropolis that has now turned into a desert due to climate change makes me think that we need to respond well to climate change. Reference UNESCO World Heritage Convention website, the Awar of southern Iraq. Refuge of biodiversity and the relict landscape of the Mesopotamian cities, Wikipedia. Awar of southern Iraq, Uruk Archaeological City, Ur Archaeological City, Tel Eridu Archaeological Site, Namu Wiki, Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Bible YouTube, Uruk, Iraq, where civilization began, YouTube. 4,000-year-old ziggurat or Ur, ancient me.